Meditation 4 p.m. As is only too obvious in an environment like this, the eyes don't easily stay shut during meditation. When I closed my eyes, all that I saw was the black canvas of my eyelids, but with my eyes open, I could see out through the door of my shieling temple into enchanted scenery. The outside world barely changes, yet it is never the same, not for a moment. There are imperceptible changes, barely noticed by the eye, yet living proof that stillness exists, the background against which all life is played out. What happened next was such an imperceptible change. I had been gently preparing for it since my first meditation in the morning. My senses were tuned. At first I was not aware of it at all. It had been no more than an inkling throughout the day, though I was still too absorbed in the phenomena of my observation of the trees, the grass, the sky, to pay any attention to that which was carrying it all. I observed a rhythmic fractal pattern in the branches, superimposed on the green and absorbed by the branches at the same time. I discerned an underlying symmetry, which appeared to be the superstructure, holding everything in place, rather than the twigs connected to their branches, connected to the trunk, the roots, and the earth. As my eyes wandered further afield towards the woods in the distance, there, too, the fractal rhythms were engaged in the process of holding the world in place. I was astounded that I hadn't noticed this obvious fact before, that reality was sustained and held in place by a superordinary rhythm and harmony. No longer did it seem that the trees received their sustenance through their roots, but instead were configured by a powerful super-dimensional aspect of order and harmony, delivered through the air and the stillness surrounding them. This came as a mild surprise to my accustomed way of looking at life, because I now could see with my own eyes that the world was a fabrication of consciousness, and my old way of looking at it was just one of many assumptions, and this particular assumption, though not less real, could easily have panned out quite differently. The same applied to all other objects around me, the wooden boards of my veranda, the ground in front of me. All was subject to a super-dimensional order and intent, primarily not physical at all, but just an outcome, an apparition. Wherever I looked, I saw a network of light and energy, keeping the air and the objects within it sustained with life and holding it in place. As I stared at the grass, it was the same. The essential aspect of the grass was the light, and the physical blades were just an outcrop of the light. Wherever I looked, I found the same. There was nothing more fundamental than the light, and it was in, above, and surrounding everything without exception, including the thing which I referred to as my body. I noticed with astonishment and without any fuss that I was simply enlightened. There were no ifs or buts. It was just utter simplicity and an indisputable observation of fact. I was stunned that enlightenment could be so natural and without any form of announcement. But what surprised me the most was that I had been enlightened all my life, even for all eternity, but simply had not noticed. The grass in front of the shieling vibrated in light. Around the edges of the patch of grass the light rose into the air as if forming a crown, and wherever I moved my eyes the crown followed, a headdress of light wherever I looked. It showed me that the world was made out of light, and there was nothing to dispute the facts or usurp its reality. It was unmistakable and real, and seeing it as anything else was just a glitch of perception, a temporary one at that. here one moment, gone the next, without substance of its own. The light I saw was the true foundation, anything else a mirage. Now I was living in a space where the world showed me its true origin in plain sight. All is made of light, and I calmly accepted that I was there too and was made of light. Until now this was just a perceived fact of reality, but then I became uncertain. What was the nature of my perception? What perceived it? I felt stranded and turned to my silent companion for support to help me across into the heart of the reality I saw. And with the combined strength of my soul and existence, I silently shouted through this infinite space of light, "Convince me, take me to the heart." I looked over to my left, as if I was expecting my own mother to grab my hand and squeeze it reassuringly, but instead a warming wave of love lifted me to my feet and walked me to the opening of the door, where I stared, transfixed, into the crown of light. I can't determine which caused the ecstasy, the joy that my silent call was responded to by the love of my silent companion, which at this moment had proved its reality, or that I found myself standing within a crown of light, being the very light the crown was made of. The only perception was one of intense ecstasy, where every breath I took fanned its flames and made it more intense. My realization was not one of knowing, but one of being. Whereas the day before there was an otherness which made me turn and flee, here I had long crossed that point, and without any fear. I had crossed it before I even realized. It had been happening gently all day, and it had been happening all my life, and even before I began. I had been enlightened, been the light in my essence, but always forgot. Now, standing in its very centre, the centre of the crown of light, I received its ecstasy. No sign of dread, no otherness, only the realization of home, irrevocably my true abode, united with the element that made me. There are no words to commemorate the vistas of eternal being, because words are only a blurry reflection, like the lake rippled by the wind. It doesn't touch the land surrounding it. A fish may break the surface of the water, but will plunge back by its own gravity. Had I ceased to be a fish? For a short while I had breathed the air and seen the surrounding land, basking in ecstasy, in eternity, a brief moment which had shown me what I really was, an enlightened being, not for a single blink divorced from this reality. How foolish to forget. Words have to be suspended for description because they would utterly fail, even mislead. All that can be said is that no person on earth can sustain such intensity for long without burning to a cinder, or terminating his physical life and entering forever into the ring of fire to be devoured and become one with its own source, at which point all ecstasy must stop. The moment the ecstasy abated, the world came flooding back, and with all its pain, an ecstatic pain, which made me break up into tiny pieces. I began to cry, like a newborn babe seeing the darkness of the daylight for the first time. Every piece of me that shattered was distributed over the whole world, into every atom, feeling its density and pain. In a powerful surge, I felt the pain of every living person, and I cried out loud, consumed by the suffering of every living creature on this planet. Then I broke down again, consumed by pain, yet simultaneously compensated and ravished by an intense ecstasy. And then I was back, and yet at the same time still felt strangely yet absolutely connected to my source. I was not abandoned. After my body had stopped wailing and crying from the pain of its birth and the pain of the world and its disintegration, another part of me stood by my side. It was me, my silent companion. I was the silent companion. I looked with compassion at my body and watched it withering away. The spell had been broken, the illusion destroyed. I was no longer a separate something. I was here to live a new life as somebody I had always been, but never realized. I looked at my watch and learned that no more than 10 minutes had passed. 10 minutes as a fish in the air, or as a ravishing flame in an inferno of fire. To endure this state, I would have to cease being a body and become everything instead. I now was again a body, but it was only a veil, and that was simply a statement of material fact. After my 10-minute moment, I was still who I was, and will be who I am, a man who had regained his memory, endowed with gratitude that he was now aware of the true facts. My origin and my destiny were rolled into one. I am nothing, and I am everything, and nothing will ever change the fact.